Long ago, hidden deep in the heart of the forested highlands, there was a quiet little village called Njaleko. The people of Njaleko were simple and hard-working. They grew cassava and millet on red soil, fetched water from the clear stream of River Muntu, and told stories under the moonlight, their voices mixing with the chirps of crickets and the soft howl of night winds. Njaleko was peaceful, yes, but it was also a village where people feared anything strange. They believed in omens, in dreams, in whispers carried by birds. If something moved differently, looked unusual, or made sounds that didn't belong, the villagers would lower their voices, spit over their left shoulder and say, "May the spirits stay far from me." In this quiet village lived a woman named Tendai. She was not old, but life had made her shoulders heavy. Tendai was kind-hearted, always helping others, even when her own hands were empty. She had lost her husband to a sudden illness not long after they married, and for years she had lived alone in a small hut with a clay stove and a straw mat. But then one day, Tendai's belly began to grow. The villagers were surprised. She had not remarried, and no one ever saw her with a man. Some women whispered that perhaps a spirit had visited her in the night. Others said she had been cursed by stepping on an old grave in the forest. But Tendai only smiled, placing her hand gently on her round belly. "My child is a blessing," she would say softly, no matter what they say. Every morning she swept her compound clean and hummed lullabies to the little one inside her. But there was something odd. Her belly was large, yes, but it never moved, no kicks, no turns. Just heavy and still like a pot full of stones. Some neighbors noticed. They murmured behind her back, "She's been pregnant for too long." One old woman said, "Maybe the child is sleeping," said another. "Sleeping? Or maybe not alive," Ahin whispered a third. But Tendai held on to hope. Every night she rubbed shea butter on her skin and sang soft songs, calling to her child, "Wake up, little one, dance for your mama." The days turned into weeks. The rains came, washing the dust from the trees. Thunder rolled across the sky like angry drums. The moon grew fat and full, and then, on a night when the wind screamed like a wild animal, Tendai woke with a pain deep in her belly. She clutched her stomach and cried out. "It's time," she gasped, crawling toward the door. Her neighbor, Mama Kayo, heard the scream and rushed over, her wrapper flapping behind her like a bird's wings. "The baby is coming," Tendai cried. Soon other women gathered. They brought warm water in calabashes, folded clean cloths, and laid out mats. On the floor, candles flickered as the storm raged outside. The wind howled through the cracks in the walls. Lightning flashed again and again, lighting the hut like a drumbeat from the gods. Tendai groaned in pain, her body shaking. She pushed again and again, sweat pouring down her face. The midwife, a sharp-eyed woman named Auntie Noma, knelt between her legs, waiting to catch the baby. "Push, Tendai. One more time," she shouted. With one last cry, Tendai pushed, and everything went still. There was no baby's cry, only silence. The air in the hut felt thick, heavy like palm oil on a hot day. Auntie Noma's hands trembled. Her eyes widened. What is this?" she whispered. In her hands was not a newborn baby. It was a small wooden coffin. Gasps filled the room. A young girl dropped the water bowl. An old woman screamed and covered her face. Someone muttered a prayer to the ancestors. "What kind of evil is this?" Mama Kayo whispered, stepping back in fear. The coffin was dark, made from polished ebony wood. Carved into its sides were tiny faces, some crying, some grinning. Others twisted in strange silent screams. Tendai, weak and soaked in sweat, tried to sit up. Where is my child?" she asked, her voice shaking. No one answered. Even Auntie Noma stepped away, her hands still trembling. The coffin sat in the center of the room, and though no one had touched it, it began to move. It shook once, then again. A scratching sound came from inside, like fingernails scraping a wooden drum. The lid creaked, slow and heavy, like something rising from the grave. Outside, villagers heard the noise. They gathered around the hut, whispering, afraid, to go inside. The coffin creaked open inch by inch. Then they saw it. Two tiny, dark hands reached up, pushing the lid wide. Inside the coffin, sitting silently, was a child. But this was no ordinary child. His skin was pale, paler than river clay, and his eyes were as black as the night sky with no moon. He did not cry, he did not smile, he only stared. Tendai looked at him, her heart twisting. "My baby," she whispered. She reached out a shaky hand, but the child did not reach back. Instead, he lifted his small hand and pointed, straight at Auntie Noma. The midwife gasped. Her body froze. Her eyes rolled back. And with a soft thud, she fell to the ground, dead. Screams erupted. The women rushed out of the hut, pushing each other aside, their voices filled with panic. "The child is cursed," someone shouted. "It's the work of dark spirits," cried another. But Tendai did not run, she could not. Her heart, even in its fear, still beat for her child. The baby slowly climbed out of the coffin. His little feet touched the floor, and instantly the hut grew cold. Frost began to crawl along the ground, turning the woven mats white, turning breath into mist. Tendai's eyes filled with tears. Her arms ached to hold him, but her legs would not move. The baby looked up at her. His face twisted slightly, and then, in a voice that sounded like both a whisper and a scream, he spoke. "Mama." Tendai shivered. Her lips trembled, but she didn't move. Outside, the villagers stood frozen, in fear. "That is not a baby," said Elder Maputo, the village's oldest man. "That is something else." The village chief, Chief Rafumo, arrived with his carved staff. He stepped to the front, his beard white as ash, his eyes narrow. "Bring the child outside," he ordered. But no one moved. Even the bravest warriors lowered their spears and shook their heads. Inside the hut, the child took a step forward. His little fingers pointed toward the door, and without warning, the doorway burst into flames. Screams broke out. The villagers stumbled back, but the flames didn't touch the child. He stepped through the fire like it was mist, his dark eyes locked on the crowd. Behind him the fire died, leaving a circle of ash. Tendai followed, barefoot, shaking. "Please," she begged, "he's just a baby." But even she wasn't sure anymore. Chief Rafumo raised his staff again. "This child cannot stay in Njaleko," he said. "He brings fear. He brings death." Tendai shook her head, holding back sobs. "He is my son." But the villagers had made up their minds. Their chants grew louder. "Return him to the spirits. Send him away before he curses us all." Clouds above thickened. The wind howled again, bending the trees. The child looked up at the sky. His face stayed calm, unreadable. Then, slowly, he lifted his hand, and the wind stopped. Every leaf, every sound. The world turned silent. Even the birds held their breath. He turned toward a small boy hiding behind his mother. He raised his hand again, and the boy rose into the air, floating like a feather caught in magic. His mother screamed, grabbing at his legs, but the child's power was too strong. Tendai fell to her knees. "Please," she sobbed, "stop." The baby blinked once, and just like that, the boy dropped from the sky. With a heavy thud, he hit the ground. His chest rose weakly. Barely moving, the boy was alive, but only just. The villagers gasped in horror. Mothers clutched their children tighter. The air felt like it had been drained of breath. Chief Rafumo's voice trembled. The man who had never known fear now held his staff like a crutch. "This child is not of our world," he said, voice hoarse. He pointed at Tendai with his shaking hand. "Take him and go. Leave Njaleko. Never return." Tendai stood frozen for a moment, tears filling her eyes. Her body ached. Her heart begged her to plead, to beg for mercy, for a second chance, but she could see it in their faces. It was useless. No one would listen. No one saw a mother. No one saw a child. They only saw danger. Tendai bent slowly, lifting her son. His tiny body was cold, colder than ice, colder than river stones at dawn, colder than anything human should be. She clutched him close to her chest and turned away. Without a word, without a goodbye, she stepped into the shadows of the forest. Her bare feet sank into the wet earth. Behind her, the people of Njaleko watched with mixed hearts, some full of pity, others with relief. And the moment she disappeared into the trees, they sealed the gates of the village. Forever. Tendai walked, for hours, Her arms burned from holding her child. Her feet stung with every step. The forest was thick, filled with vines and trees so tall they blocked out the moonlight. Her breath came in gasps, but she did not stop. The wind whispered in voices she could not understand. The leaves rustled like they were gossiping about her. Fate! The branches swayed as if bowing to the strange power that walked among them. "Where do we go?" she whispered, her voice dry. The baby looked up at her. His small fingers reached for her cheek. Cold, so cold. But then, he smiled. A small, breathy sound escaped his lips. A laugh. Not joyful, not warm. It sounded like something laughing from the bottom of a well, echoing far and eerie. Tendai stopped, because right in front of her, in the middle of the narrow forest path, was the coffin. The same coffin she had left behind in the village. The same dark wood. The same carved faces twisted in silent screams. She gasped and took a step back. "How?" she whispered. It sat there like it had legs of its own, like it had walked beside them, hidden by trees and fog. Her son squirmed in her arms. He reached out for the coffin, fingers twitching with excitement. "No," Tendai whispered. "Leave it." But it was too late. The lid of the coffin cracked open. Tendai held her breath. Inside, red silk lined the coffin like a bed of blood. But something stirred beneath it. Something thick and black. Mist. A heavy black mist slithered out, wrapping itself around the baby's arms like it knew him, like it had missed him. Instead of crying, the baby giggled. His eyes lit up, black pools glowing with delight. The mist twisted, rising high into the air. It began to take shape, stretching like smoke, curling like a snake, forming a tall figure. A man, but not a man. He was thin as a reed, taller than any tree around him. His eyes were hollow. His body flickered in and out, like a shadow caught between two worlds. He opened his mouth, and his voice came like a whisper dragged through sand. "How you have finally come." Tendai clutched her baby tightly. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice shaking. The figure tilted his head slowly. "I am Mokile, the Dumakiru," he said. "And that—" He pointed a long, bony finger at the child. "That is my heir." Tendai's stomach turned. She stepped back, shaking her head. "He is my son," she said, her voice rising. Mowgli let out a sound. It might have been a laugh, but it was dry and brittle, like bones snapping underfoot. "He was never meant for your world," the shadow replied. "He was born for the in-between, the land where the lost wander, the place between life and death." The trees groaned around them. Leaves fell without wind. Even the crickets went silent. The baby looked at the keeper, his face unreadable. Then he reached out his arms. "Papa," he said softly. Tendai's knees buckled. "No," she whispered. Her breath grew short. Her heart raced. She turned suddenly and ran. Her feet barely touched the ground. She dodged roots and ducked under branches. She held her son close, praying he wouldn't vanish from her arms. But the coffin, oh, the coffin, it glided beside her like a loyal dog, not walking, not floating, just moving, as if it belonged to her path. The child pressed his hand to her chest. "Mama," he said softly, "you cannot run from what I am." Tendai stumbled. Up ahead, the trees began to twist, their trunks bent into faces, gnarled and ancient. Faces with mouths open in silent screams. Faces that whispered her name. "Tendai, Tendai," she cried out, covering her ears. The coffin floated ahead, blocking the path, and beside it, Mokul appeared once more, his hollow eyes never blinking. "He will never belong to you," he said. "Give him to me, and you may return to the land of the living." Tendai shook her head furiously. No. She held her son tighter. Her arms burned. Her soul burned. "I will find a way to save him." Mokule's form flickered like candlelight. "Then you must make a choice," he whispered. He raised a hand and the forest began to change. The trees turned to pillars of stone, grey and cracked. The ground below split into dry earth, veins of heat glowing red. Shadows slithered across the ground like vipers. Tendai's breath caught in her throat. "What choice?" she asked. Mokul pointed at the child. Return him to the coffin and he shall become what he was born to be, a ruler of shadows, the heir of the in-between, or refuse, and he will destroy you. Tendai looked down at her child. His black eyes shimmered with something ancient, something not human. He watched her, waiting. "Do you want to go with him?" she asked softly. The baby blinked. Then, slowly, he shook his head. "Mama," he whispered, "I want to stay." Tendai's heart broke and healed in the same breath. "Then I will protect you," she said. She turned toward Mokala and spoke with fire in her soul. "You will never take him from me." The shadows around them shuddered. The Dumakiru smiled, a smile that had never seen joy. "Then you must fight." Before she could react, the coffin snapped open with a loud crack. Tendai ducked low and curled her body over the baby. As claws of black mist swept past her, she held him tightly against her chest as the mist slashed across her back, cold as river stones in the heart of night. Pain ripped through her body, but she refused to cry out. She would not let go. Her spine arched with the sting of it, like fire and frost mixed together and poured into her bones. Mokale, the Dumakiru, stepped closer through the shadows. His feet didn't touch the ground. His voice was soft, as if he wasn't speaking but remembering. "You cannot win, mother," he said. But Tendai didn't answer. She could barely breathe. Her fingers dug into the cracked earth beneath her. The soil was dry and crumbling like old ash. She scraped until her nails bled, until her hand closed around something sharp, a stone, rough, jagged, real. If this was her last breath, she would use it to fight. Above her, the coffin rose even higher. It hovered in the smoky air, wrapped in coils of twisting black mist. The coffin pulsed like a living thing, breathing with rage and hunger. All around them the forest had changed. Trees stood like grey statues. The sky was gone. The air smelled like old blood and burnt leaves. And then the shadows began to shift again. This time they formed figures, tall, thin shapes with hollow eyes and melting faces. They had no mouths, but they whispered in voices that scraped like broken flutes. "Come with us." They stretched their arms toward the baby. "Come home," Tendai screamed and clutched him tighter. Her heart pounded like drums at a warrior's burial. "He is already home," she roared, her voice echoing across the dead forest, and without thinking, she threw the stone. It cut through the air and smashed into the side of the coffin. The sound it made was not wood. It was deeper, older. A scream tore through the sky, shaking the earth beneath them. The ghostly figures around her twisted in agony, writhing like flames caught in a whirlwind. Their bodies flickered and bent backwards, vanishing into black curls of smoke. Mokel's face tightened. "You are more stubborn than I thought," he said. He raised his long hand again. The coffin screamed louder, an endless sound that shook the very ground. The baby whimpered and buried his face into Tendai's chest. "Enough!" Tendai shouted. Her voice cracked, but her spirit did not. "If you want him, you will have to take me too." For a heartbeat, the world stopped moving. Even the wind forgot how to blow. For the first time, Mokale's face shifted. Not with anger, not with power, with hesitation. He tilted his head slowly. "A mother's love," he murmured. "It is a powerful thing." The forest sighed. The ghostly shapes around them faded into shadows once more. The trees leaned away. The mist stilled, and then quietly the baby lifted his hand. He reached for Tendai's cheek. His fingers were no longer as cold. They trembled gently. "Mama," he whispered, and his black eyes began to shine with light. Not fire, not lightning. Something older, softer. A golden glow rose from his skin like morning sun through clouds. The shadows around them began to shrink. The forest trembled. The coffin thrashed violently in mid-air, struggling to stay together. Mokla took a step back. For the first time his voice lost its calm. "What is this?" he barked. But the baby only giggled, soft and warm. His laughter swept across the dead forest like wind through dry grass. The golden light grew stronger. The coffin gave one last shake, then cracked straight down the middle. With a sound like thunder breaking stone, it split into two and fell into dust. Mokila gasped. "Impossible," he whispered. The mist recoiled. The ghostly figures were gone, vanished like smoke in wind. The light swirled around Tendai and her child, wrapping them in warmth. She gasped as the heat soaked into her skin. Her cuts faded, her back stopped burning, her soul felt lighter, stronger. Mowgli's form began to flicker, his body shifting like a dying fire. "You have undone what was meant to be," he said. "But fate," he added, voice weakening, "is not so easily rewritten." Then, like a whisper that had been carried too far, he faded into nothing. The forest was silent once more. Tendai looked down at her son. He was still the same child. Same cheeks, same hands, same soft curls on his head, but something had changed. His eyes, once deep black wells, were now soft pools of brown, with flecks of golden light dancing within. "You saved us," she breathed. The baby giggled and reached for her face. She hugged him tightly, rocking gently, pressing her lips to his forehead. The coffin was gone. The shadows had vanished, but something deep inside her knew this story would never be forgotten. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the trees, something still watched. Waiting. Tendai stood slowly, holding her child against her chest. The light around them faded, leaving behind only the sound of rustling leaves and her own breath. She had won, or so she thought. She took one careful step forward, and the earth beneath her feet trembled. A deep, guttural sound rumbled through the forest. The trees creaked and moaned, the roots shifted. The baby stiffened in her arms. His fingers dug into her wrapper. "Mama," he whispered, voice shaking. "Something's coming." Tendai's heart thudded once, twice. She turned slowly, scanning the trees. The wind began to blow again, but not as it had before. This wind carried whispers. "He is ours. He belongs to the dark. He does not belong to you." The voices slid into her ears like snakes in tall grass. The forest, once broken, had begun to wake up. The trees bent their limbs toward her, their bark split open, revealing twisted faces, ancient and hollow-eyed. Mouths moved without sound, but their meaning was clear. Tendai held her son tighter. "I am his mother," she said aloud. Her voice did not tremble. The forest did. Then, from the edge of the darkness, another figure emerged. Tendai turned sharply, her arms tightening around her son. She had thought the worst was behind her, but the presence that stepped forward was not the Dumakiru. No, this was something older, colder, hungrier. The figure was a woman, tall and impossibly thin. Her body was wrapped in a flowing black robe that moved like living smoke. Every step she took made the leaves wither beneath her. Her face was hidden beneath a large hood, but even without eyes, Tendai felt her watching. The very air thickened, pressing against her lungs. Tendai's voice cracked as she asked, "Who are you?" The woman's reply came like a whisper drifting through a tomb. "I'm the Naduma," she said. "And that child, he was never yours." Tendai's heart thudded, then stilled. Her grip tightened protectively around the baby. "You're lying," she said. "He is my son." The woman tilted her head just slightly. Her hood shifted, revealing a glimpse of her lips, pale and bloodless like bones bleached under the sun. "Do you truly believe that?" she asked, her voice soft but venomous. "Or have you always known, deep in your bones, that something was wrong?" Tendai felt it. A cold finger of doubt slid down her spine. A breath caught in her throat. Her thoughts wavered, but she shook her head violently, clearing her mind. "No," she said, louder this time. "He is mine. I carried him. I suffered for him. I brought him into this world." The Naduma took a slow step forward. The ground darkened beneath her feet. "Did you?" she asked, her voice curling with poison. "Did you birth a child? Or a coffin?" The baby whimpered softly, pressing his cold face into Tendai's shoulder. The woman raised one pale hand. The shadows around her came alive, swirling like rivers of ink, reaching with long, ghostly fingers. "Give him to me," she commanded. "Or watch the world around you crumble under the weight of what he truly is." Beneath Tendai's feet, the earth cracked. She stumbled but didn't fall. Her voice trembled, but her soul held firm. "He is not a monster," she said. "He's just a baby." The Naduma laughed, a soft, hollow sound that held no warmth. You think love can change what he was born to be? Then she pulled down her hood. Tendai gasped. There was no face, no eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just a hollow void, black and endless, where a human face should be. The woman's voice rang from that emptiness. He is the heir of the in-between. His very breath breaks balance. His shadow poisons soil. But as she spoke, the baby lifted his small hand and pointed straight at her. No, he said. The word was small, but it rippled through the air like thunder beneath the ground. The Naduma froze. The trees stopped moving. Even the wind forgot how to breathe. What did you say? She asked. The baby's voice came again, stronger this time. No. A burst of energy flashed from his fingertip, golden light, sharp and bright. The force of it knocked the woman backward. Tendai gasped as the earth beneath her cracked wide, and from it poured the same golden light that had destroyed the coffin. It didn't burn. It healed. It didn't blind. It revealed. The darkness peeled back like rotten bark from a tree. The Na-Duma shrieked. Her body began to flicker, her smoke-like robe unraveling. You do not understand, she screamed. He was born to rule the in-between. Without him, the balance will break. But the light only grew stronger. It wrapped around Tendai and her son like a second skin. It danced through the leaves, crept into the roots, and kissed. The stars above. The forest trembled. The ancient trees stood straighter. The whispers faded. The cries of lost souls silenced. The Na-Duma staggered, her voice thinning. This is not over, she hissed, and with one final scream that split the air like shattered glass, she vanished, pulled back into the shadows that birthed her. Then silence, real silence. No more whispers, no more screams, no flickering eyes in the trees. The world had stilled. Tendai collapsed to her knees, holding her child close. Her body trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of everything she had. Survived. It's over, she whispered, resting her forehead on his. But deep inside, a quiet voice answered, Not yet. She looked down at her son. He looked back. His eyes, once black as midnight, now shimmered with flecks of gold. They held both, light and shadow, warmth and mystery. He was no longer just a child of darkness. He was something new, something born from the in-between, but touched by love. He reached for her face. His fingers were no longer cold. They were warm, like sun-kissed soil after the rains. Tendai smiled, tears running down her face. You are free now, she said. She stood slowly. The path ahead had cleared. No fog, no thorns. Just soft dirt and golden leaves falling like blessings. The darkness had fled, but she knew the truth. She could never return to Njaleko. Even with light in his eyes, the villagers would never see him as anything but a curse. No matter the light in his eyes, no matter the warmth in his touch, if Tendai ever returned to Njaleko, they would never see her child as anything but darkness dressed in skin. But Tendai no longer needed their eyes to see truth. She kissed her son's forehead and whispered, We will find a new home. And so, with her child cradled in her arms, she stepped forward, each footfall lighter than the one before. Behind her, the coffin was dust. The shadows were gone, and the night no longer whispered secrets into her ears. For the first time since his birth, the world around her felt still, felt safe. Days passed, then weeks. Tendai walked through plains of golden grass, crossed rivers with waters clear enough to reflect the sky. She spoke little. Her son, though small, was quiet too, watching birds, touching bark, listening to the wind as if it spoke only to him. Far from Njaleko, nestled beside a wide, slow-moving river, Tendai came upon a village called Nambele. The people of Nambele were kind. They welcomed strangers without questions. They had never heard of coffins born in place of children. They did not know of the in-between or the monsters that crawled through mist. Tendai built a small round hut at the edge of the village. She gathered water every morning, sold carved beads at market, and raised her son with the strength of 10 mothers. She named him Kato. Kato grew quickly, though he had once arrived in the world from a place beyond understanding. Here, under Tendai's watchful eye, he became a boy full of laughter and wonder. He played with the village goats, helped old women carry yams, and danced during drum festivals. And yet, he was not like other children. He was gentler, quieter. When other boys fought over mangoes, Cato offered to share. When storms rolled in and other children cried, Cato stood by the window, watching the sky like it was telling him stories. At night, when the village lay asleep, Tendai sometimes sat outside with a gourd of water and watched the forest, and in the far edges of the trees. She saw them. Flickers, shadows, shapes that didn't belong. They never came close, but they never left. She didn't speak of them, not to the villagers, not to Cato. She just watched, waited, prayed. Years passed. The seasons changed their colors. The boy who had once been born from a coffin became a man strong of limb and kind of heart. The people of Njaleko loved him. He mended roofs, healed animals, and knew which herbs to boil for fever. His laugh was deep. His touch was warm. He had no memory of the coffin, no memory of the keeper of the forgotten, no memory of the pale-faced woman wrapped in smoke. But Tendai knew. She knew something still slept inside him. There were signs. When the wind howled too loud, he would pause. When someone lied, his eyes would flicker gold. Sometimes, just before dawn, his pupils would shimmer. Only for a heartbeat, then fade again. He never noticed. She never told. Then one morning, while the birds were just beginning their song, Tendai sat by the river washing her son's old tunic. Cato approached. His footsteps were silent, but she felt him before he spoke. "Mama," he said gently. She looked up. He stood tall now, his shoulders broad, his hands rough from helping others. But his eyes, those were the same. Soft, ancient, familiar. "I have to go," he said. Her breath hitched. She didn't ask why, not yet. She saw the way his gaze stretched toward the distant hills, where the trees stood taller than towers, cloaked in mist. "Something is calling me," he continued. "I don't know what it is, but I have to find out." Tendai wanted to say no, to hold him, to tell him that the world was cruel and full of things that didn't love as deeply as she did. But she didn't. She had always known. This day would come, she nodded slowly. "Then go," she said. "Go and be who you were meant to be." Cato stepped forward. He leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead. His hands were warm, steady. Then he turned and walked toward the trees. The mist swallowed him. Tendai watched until he was gone. Her heart was both heavy and light. She did not cry because she knew he would return. He was no longer a child of darkness. He was something else now, something that walked in the light. The shadows would not control him. The world would not fear him. And deep within the rustling grass she heard a whisper ride the wind. "Thank you." As the sun rose over Njaleko, Tendai stood slowly and made her way back to her hut. She had spent many years running, from the village that shunned her, from the forest that wanted her son, from the fate others tried to force upon him. But now, she was at peace. She had defied everything. She had changed what was meant to be. She had proven that love could conquer even what came from death. The villagers never asked about her past. She never told them. But on quiet nights, when the stars were bright and the world felt still, she sometimes heard an old echo. The sound of a coffin lid slamming shut, and she would smile, knowing it would never open again. Far away, beyond the reach of memory or map, in a land untouched by time, Cato walked deeper into the unknown. He didn't flinch when the winds howled, didn't fear the whispers that tickled the trees. He did not belong to the in-between. He had been born from it. But raised in love, he was not its ruler. He was not its prisoner. He was something greater. As he stepped past the last tree, where the forest ended and silence began, he paused. The wind curled around his ear, and in it, he heard his mother's voice. "You are free." And for the first time in his life, he believed it. He smiled, and without looking back, he disappeared into the mist. Even when a soul is born from darkness, love can guide it toward light. Fate may shape our beginnings, but it is the courage to choose love that defines who we truly become. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up so others can find it too. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more unforgettable African tales every week. Turn on the bell so you never miss a story. And thank you for walking this journey with us.